Chapter 2, Mass Meditations, Health, Plans for Disease, Epidemics of Beliefs, and Effective Mental Inoculations Against Despair. Mass Meditations, a 1-minute pause. Okay. Health Plans for Disease, Epidemics of Beliefs, and Effective Mental Inoculations Against Despair. While in this book I will point out some of the unfortunate areas of private and mass experience, I will also provide some suggestions for effective solutions. You get what you concentrate upon. Your mental images bring about their own fulfillment. These are ancient dictums, but you must understand the ways in which your mass communication systems amplify both the positive and the negative issues. I may for a while stress the ways in which individually and as a civilization you have undermined your own feelings of safety. Yet I will also give you methods to reinforce those necessary feelings of biological integrity and spiritual comprehension that can vastly increase your spiritual and physical existence. Your beliefs have generated feelings of unworth, having artificially separated yourself from nature. You do not trust it, but often experience it as an adversary. Your religions granted man a soul while denying any to other species. Your bodies then were relegated to nature and your souls to God, who stood immaculately apart from his creations. Your scientific beliefs tell you that your entire world happened accidentally. Your religions tell you that man is sinful. The body is not to be trusted. The senses can lead you astray. In this maze of beliefs, you have largely lost a sense of your own worth and purpose. A generalized fear and suspicion is generated, and life too often becomes stripped of any heroic qualities. The body cannot react to generalized threats. It is therefore put under constant strain in such circumstances, and seeks to specify the danger. It is geared to act in your protection. It builds up strong stresses, therefore, so that on many occasions a specific disease or threat situation is manufactured to rid the body of a tension grown too strong to bear. Many of my readers are familiar with private meditation when concentration is focused in one particular area. There are many methods and schools of thought here, but a highly suggestive state of mind results in which spiritual, mental, and physical goals are sought. It is impossible to meditate without a goal, for that intent is itself a purpose. Unfortunately, many of your public health programs and commercial statements through the various media provide you with mass meditations of a most deplorable kind. I refer to those in which the specific symptoms of various diseases are given, in which the individual is further told to examine the body with those symptoms in mind. I also refer to those statements that just as unfortunately specify diseases for which the individual may experience no symptoms of an observable kind, but is cautioned that these disastrous physical events may be happening despite his or her feelings of good health. Here, the generalized fears fostered by religious, scientific, and cultural beliefs are often given as blueprints of diseases in which a person can find a specific focus. The individual can say, "Of course I feel listless or panicky or unsafe since I have such and such a disease." The breast cancer suggestions associated with self-examinations have caused more cancers than any treatments have cured. They involve intense meditation of the body and adverse imagery that itself affects the bodily cells. Public health announcements about high blood pressure themselves raise the blood pressure of millions of television viewers. Your current ideas of preventative medicine, therefore, generate the very kind of fear that causes disease. They all undermine the individual's sense of bodily security and increase stress while offering the body a specific, detailed disease plan. But most of all, they operate to increase the individual sense of alienation from the body and to promote a sense of powerlessness and duality. Your medical commercials are equally disease-promoting, many meaning to offer you relief through a product, instead actually promote the condition through suggestion, thereby generating a need for the product itself. Headache remedies are case in point here. Nowhere do any medically oriented commercial or public service announcements mention the body's natural defenses, its integrity, vitality, or strength. Nowhere in your television or radio matter is any emphasis put upon the healthy. Medical statistics deal with the diseased. Studies upon the healthy are not carried out. More and more foods, drugs, and natural environmental conditions are being added to the list of disease-causing elements. Different reports place dairy products, red meats, coffee, tea, eggs, and fats on the list, period. Generations before you managed to subsist on many such foods, and they were, in fact, promoted as additive to health. Indeed, man almost seems to be allergic to his own natural environment, a prey to the weather itself. It is true that your food contains chemicals it did not in years past. Yet, within reason, man is biologically capable of assimilating such materials and using them to his advantage. When man feels powerless, however, and in a state of generalized fear, he can even turn the most natural earthly ingredients against himself. Your television and your arts and sciences as well add up to mass meditation. In your culture, at least the educated in the literary arts provide you with novels featuring anti-heroes and often portray an individual existence as being without meaning, in which no action is sufficient to mitigate the private puzzlement or anguish. Many, not all, plotless novels or movies are the results of this belief in man's powerlessness. In that context, no action is heroic, and man is everywhere the victim of an alien universe. On the other hand, your common, unlettered, violent television dramas do indeed provide a service for, that's a bad word there, imaginatively specify a generalized fear in a given situation, which is then resolved through drama. Individual action counts. The plots may be stereotyped or the acting horrendous, but in the most conventional terms, the good man wins. Such programs do indeed pick up the generalized fears of the nation, but they also represent folk dramas, disdained by the intelligentsia, and in which the common man can portray heroic capabilities, act concisely toward a desired end, and triumph. These programs often portray your cultural world in exaggerated terms, and most resolution is indeed through violence. Yet your more educated beliefs lead you to an even more pessimistic picture in which even the violent action of men and women who are driven to the extreme serves no purpose. The individual must feel that his actions count. He is driven to a violent action only as a last resort, and illness often is that last resort. Your television dramas, the cops and robbers shows, the spy productions are simplistic, yet they relieve tension in a way that your public health announcements cannot do. The viewer can say, "Of course I feel panicky, unsafe and frightened because I live in such a violent world." The generalized fear can find a reason for its existence, but the programs at least provide a resolution dramatically set, while the public health announcements continue to generate unease. Those mass meditations, therefore, reinforce negative conditions. In the overall, then, violent shows provide a surface, in that they usually promote the sense of a man's or a woman's individual power over a given set of circumstances. At best, the public service announcements introduce the doctor as mediator. You are supposed to take your body to a doctor as you take your car to a garage to have its parts serviced. Your body is seen as a vehicle out of control that needs constant scrutiny. The doctor is like a biological mechanic who knows your body far better than you. Now, these medical beliefs are intertwined with your economic and cultural structures, so you cannot lay the blame upon medical men or their profession alone. Your economic well-being is also a part of your personal reality. Many dedicated doctors use medical technology with spiritual understanding, and they are themselves the victims of the beliefs they hold. If you do not buy headache potions, your uncle or your neighbor may be out of business and not able to support his family, and therefore lack the means to buy your wares. You cannot disconnect one area of life from another. In mass, your private beliefs form your cultural reality. Your society is not a thing in itself apart from you, but the result of the individual beliefs of each person in it. There is no stratum of society that you do not, in one way or another, affect. Your religions stress sin. Your medical profession stresses disease. Your orderly sciences stress the chaotic and accidental theories of creation. Your psychologies stress men as victims of their backgrounds. Your most advanced thinkers emphasize man's rape of the planet, or focus upon the future disaster that will overtake the world, or see men once again as victims of the stars. Many of your resurrected occult schools speak of a recommended death of desire, the annihilation of the ego, for the transmutation of physical elements to finer levels. In all such cases, the clear spiritual and biological integrity of the individual suffers, and the precious immediacy of your moments is largely lost. Earth life is seen as murky, a dim translation of greater existence, rather than portrayed as the unique, creative, living experience that it should be. The body becomes disoriented, sabotaged. The clear lines of communication between spirit and body become cluttered. Individually and in mass, diseases and conditions result that are meant to lead you into other realizations. Now, notes on session 805. When Seth came through with, "You get what you concentrate upon," I remembered that he had first spoken that sentence some years ago, and that soon afterward I'd made a little paper sign bearing those words and taped it to a wall in one of the 2 apartments we occupied in Elmira, New York. Had I dated the excerpt, I knew that a few years later the sign had accompanied us on our move to the Hill House just outside the city where we live now. After tonight's session, I found it again upon a wall with the date, February 26, 1972. From our records, I learned that I'd taken Seth's quotation from a personal session Jane held while we were on vacation in Marathon, a resort community in the Florida Keys. The session had been an impromptu one and developed on our last night in Marathon because we'd been worrying about our goals in life and how significant a part the Seth material might play in our affairs. We'd felt strong attractions toward what seemed to be a simpler, more open and pleasant life in the Keys, where the weather was excellent all year, and living in a trailer was an accepted way of life. Yet we didn't think we could afford it. The Seth material had been published in mid-1970s, but sales were slow, and Seth Speaks wasn't out yet. We'd just finished correcting the page proofs for that work. I'd given up my commercial art job before we went on vacation and didn't know what I'd end up doing besides helping Jane as much as I could. As I suppose is almost always the case with tourists in romantic, faraway places, we had many ties back home. Although Jane's father and my own had died the previous year, our mothers were still living. Jane's in a nursing home in upstate New York, and mine at the Butts family home in Surrey, Pennsylvania, which is only 18 miles from Elmira and just south of the New York state border. While Jane and I were away, my mother stayed with one of my brothers who lives some 60 miles below Sari. All our possessions were in Elmira. To convert a trailer to trailer living meant that we'd have to dispose of most of what we owned, including paintings and manuscripts, furniture, files, books, and many written records, something we probably couldn't have brought ourselves to do. And how could we go to Florida and leave all of our friends? And how inconvenient would it be to deal with a publisher, Prentice Hall, headquartered way up north in New Jersey? Jane was much more willing to attempt the move than I was, but I think we knew all along that beneath our questions and feelings, the idea of moving was more like a shared dream or a probable reality we chose not to explore during our current physical lives. Jane's mother was to die within 3 months of our return home, mine over a year later. Seth gave us an excellent session for us on that last warm night in Marathon. He did his best to reassure us. The following excerpt leads up to the quotation that inspired this note. You have a relationship not only unique, the two of you, but one that also serves as a springboard for creativity. You have talents and abilities that carry with them satisfactions that you both often blithely take for granted. They are so a part of your existence that you are not even aware of them. Do not confuse your joint position with anyone else's. It is unique because the possibilities are endless. If you magnify your limitations, you create your own prisons. If you enjoy those freedoms that are yours now, you automatically increase them. You are in a clear position at this moment. You cannot expect a blissful time innocent of problems. That is not the nature of life or of existence. Your set of problems are the most creative kind. They are challenges from which great potentials can emerge. Your full energy for work and your creative drives are released and will be as you creatively use and understand your problems. But do not concentrate upon them, nor let them close your eyes to the joys and freedoms that you have. You get what you concentrate upon. There is no other main rule. As Jane wrote for this note, we think that the dangers of negative suggestions are as real as the physical ones that are connected with the overuse of X-rays, say. Certainly some women have uncovered cancers through self-examination, and in so doing perhaps saved their lives. There's no way of knowing, though, what part negative suggestion might have played in their disease conditions to begin with. With some women not conducting regular self-examination would rouse as many fears as doing them. And since those women's beliefs follow official medical ones so strictly, they're much better off with the examinations. In this and all instances regarding health, each woman should weigh all the evidence, examine her beliefs, and make her own decisions. I remind the reader that after break ended, in the last session, Seth had this to say: Left alone, the body can defend itself against any disease, but it cannot defend itself appropriately against an exaggerated general fear of disease on the individual's part. It must mirror your own feelings and assessments. Usually, now, your entire medical systems literally generate as much disease as is cured, for you are everywhere hounded by the symptoms of various diseases and filled with the fear of disease, overwhelmed by what seems to be the body's propensity toward illness. And nowhere is the body's vitality or natural defense system stressed. Seth didn't mention it in the session tonight, but Jane and I find it extremely interesting that just last week, much national publicity was given to the ongoing 2-year-old controversy among cancer specialists over whether women, especially those under 50 years of age, should be given routine mammograms, X-ray examinations, in efforts to detect breast cancer in its early stages. Involved in the arguments are the leading cancer investigative organizations in the country. For example, scientific advisors to the government's National Cancer Institute, which is conducting elaborate studies of many thousands of women of varying ages, have called for a halt to the routine screening of younger women. These scientists are on record as stating that such X-raying may cause more breast cancer than it cures. Many millions of dollars and much time and effort have been and are being given to such research programs. It will be difficult to alter those studies because of entrenched belief systems. Even the economic factors become important. Besides the great sums involved in the official programs, for instance, many private radiologists have also found mammography screening to be quite profitable. Now, there's much confusion on the part of women over whether to have mammograms. The process isn't infallible, unfortunately. Also, misinterpretations of its results have caused a number of cancer-free women to undergo mastectomies, often radical ones, when they didn't have to. Moreover, each of these individuals has to live with the belief that they've had cancer and must constantly be on the alert for any signs of its recurrence, signs they do not find. At the same time, they are subjected to even more X-ray examinations on a regular basis. They can also have insurance and employment problems, as can many other cancer patients. A controversy related to that over mammograms, but one that hasn't been nearly as well publicized, concerns prophylactic subcutaneous mastectomy, the process by which some women elect to have their breast removed before they actually develop cancer in one or both of them. These women have been told that statistically their high-risk prospects for cancer. Involved here are recent diagnostic procedures, the study of the patient's family history, the study of the density and structure of her breast tissues are determined by mammogram patterns, and the detection of possibly pre-malignant cellular changes. In this preventative operation, the surgeon leaves the nipple and the skin of the breast and restores their bulk with implants of plastic or silicone. At this time, many more doctors disagree than agree with the need for prophylactic mastectomies. Those against the procedure cite the errors possible in diagnosis, including the misinterpretation of mammographic patterns. Once again, negative suggestion rules in the present and is projected into the future, for the individual is told that she is at the mercy of her own bodily processes, which might go awry at any moment. Even when resorted to, prophylactic mastectomies are not foolproof, for a few women have still developed cancer in the area of the nipple. What Jane and I are very curious about, however, is how many statistically vulnerable women submitted to operations they didn't need, for surely a significant number of them wouldn't have developed cancer in the first place. The percentage is unknowable, of course. If it could be shown that most of the high-risk women would get cancer, there wouldn't be arguments about whether such are of general value. As things are, though, because of the controversy, women once again end up confused as to who is right and what to do. Large-scale studies, including one by the National Cancer Institute, are planned to explore the whole question of prophylactic mastectomies. I'll conclude this note by making 3 quick points. The first is that other agencies and individuals in the medical and psychological fields are conducting studies of the ties that exist between emotional states and cancer. The second is that Jane and I are perfectly aware of all the good things that medical science has contributed to our worldwide civilization, given our species' present collective beliefs about the vulnerability of the individual to outside forces. Medicine, as it's now practiced, is a vital component of that civilization. The third point is that with his views, Seth is simply trying to open our eyes to a much wider understanding of human capacities. Apropos of that final item, Jane and I refer the reader to the entire last session, for in it Seth not only discussed the body's natural defenses and how it immunizes itself, but also examined our negative cultural beliefs about the body and disease. We think his material is so good that it deserves more than one reading. Session 806. This is the first session for mass events since the last one, obviously, but with an 11-week gap between the two. How come? What were Jane and I doing all of that time? That nearly 1/4 of a year of our physical lives? First, after holding session 805, we took a 6-week break from sessions of any kind. We didn't plan to do this, it just developed. And we eventually realized that it did so through Jane's simple need for a change in routine. We had plenty of other things to do. I was still occupied daily with writing notes and appendixes. I'm going to skip on down to the next. Okay. Part 1 of the session. Sometimes I don't want to read all that in between. Because events do not exist in the concrete, done and finished versions about which you have been taught, then memory must also be a different story. You must remember the creativity and the open-ended nature of events, for even in one life, a given memory is seldom a true version of a past event. The original happening is experienced from a different perspective on the part of each person involved, of course, so that the event's implications and basic meanings may differ according to the focus of each participant. That given event, in your terms happening for the first time, say, begins to work upon the participants. Each one brings to it his or her own background, temperament, and literally 1,000 different colorations, so that the event, while shared by others, is still primarily original to each person. The moment it occurs, it begins to change as it is filtered through all of these other ingredients, and it is minutely altered furthermore by each succeeding event. The memory of an event, then, is shaped as much by the present as it is by the past. Association triggers memories, of course, and organizes memory events. It also helps color and form such events. You are used to a time structure so that you remember something that happened at a particular time in the past. Usually, you can place events in that fashion. There are neurological pockets, so to speak, so that biologically the body can place events as it perceives activity. Those neurological pulses are geared to the biological world you know. In those terms, past or future life memories usually remain like ghost images by contrast. Overall, this is necessary so that immediate body response can be focused in the time period you recognize. Other life memories are carried along, so to speak, beneath those other pulses, never, in certain terms, coming to rest so that they can be examined, but forming, say, the undercurrents upon which the memories of your current life ride. When such other life memories do come to the surface, they are of course colored by it, and their rhythm is not synchronized. They are not tied into your nervous system as precisely as your regular memories. Your present gains its feelings of depth because of your past as you understand it. In certain terms, however, the future represents, say, another kind of depth that belongs to events. A route goes out in all directions. Events do also. But the roots of events go through your past, present, and future. Often by purposefully trying to slow down your thought processes or playfully trying to speed them up, you can become aware of memories from other lives, past or future. To some extent, you allow other neurological impulses to make themselves known. There may often be a feeling of vagueness because you have no ready-made scheme of time or place with which to structure such memories. Such exercises also involve you with the facts of the events of your own life, for you automatically are following probabilities from the point of your own focus. It would be most difficult to operate within your sphere of reality without the pretension of concrete, finished events. You form your past lives now in this life as surely as you form your future ones now also. Simultaneously, each of your past and future selves dwell in their own way now, and for them the last sentence also applies. It is theoretically possible to understand much of this through an examination in depth of the events of your own life. Throwing away many taken for granted concepts, you can pick a memory, but try not to structure it, a most difficult task, for such structuring is by now almost automatic. The memory, left alone, not structured, will shimmer, shake, take other forms, and transform itself before your mental eyes, so that its shape will seem like a psychological kaleidoscope through whose focus the other events of your life will also shimmer and change. Such a memory exercise can also serve to bring in other life memories. Edges, corners, and reflections will appear, however, perhaps superimposed upon memories that you recognize as belonging to this life. Your memories serve to organize your experience and, again, follow recognized neurological sequences. Other life memories form the future, and past often bounce off of these with a motion too quick for you to follow. In a quiet moment, off guard, you might remember an event from this life, but there may be a strange feeling to it, as if something about it, some sensation, does not fit into the time slot in which the event belongs. In such cases, that present life memory is often tinged by another, so that a future or past life memory sheds its cast upon the recalled event. There is a floating quality about one portion of the memory. This happens more often than is recognized because usually you simply discount the feeling of strangeness and drop the part of the memory that does not fit. Such instances involve definite bleed-throughs, however. By being alert and catching such feelings, you can learn to use the floating part of the otherwise recognizable memory as a focus. Through association, that focus can then trigger further past or future recall. Clues also appear in the dreaming state with greater frequency, because then you are already accustomed to that kind of floating sensation in which events can seem to happen in their own relatively independent context. Dreams in which past and present are both involved are an example. Also, dreams in which the future and the past merge, and dreams in which time seems to be a changing ingredient. Now, in certain terms, the past, present, and future of your present life are all compressed in any given moment of your experience. Any such moment is therefore a gateway into all of your existence. The events that you recognize as happening now are simply specific and objective, but the most minute element of any given moment's experience is also symbolic of other events and other times. Each moment is then like a mosaic, only in your current life history you follow but one color or pattern and ignore the others. As I have mentioned in other books, you can indeed change the present to some extent by purposefully altering a memory event. That kind of synthesis can be used in many instances with many people. Such an exercise is not some theoretical, esoteric, impractical method, but a very precise, volatile, and dynamic way of helping the present self by calming the fears of a past self. That past self is not hypothetical either, but still exists, capable of being reached and of changing its reactions. You do not need a time machine to alter the past or the future. Such a technique is highly valuable. Not only are memories not dead, they are themselves ever-changing. Many alter themselves almost completely without your notice. In this unpublished apprentice novels, Rupert did 2 or 3 versions of an episode with a priest he had known in his youth. Each version, at the time he wrote it, represented his honest memory of the event. While the bare facts were more or less the same, the entire meaning and interpretation of each version differed so drastically that those differences far outweighed the similarities. Because the episode was used on 2 or 3 different occasions, Rupert could see how this memory changed. In most cases, however, people are not aware that memory changes in such a fashion, or that the events they think they recall are so different. The point is that past events grow. They are not finished. With that in mind, you can see that future lives are very difficult to explain from within your framework. A completed life in your terms is no more completed or done than any event. There is simply a cutoff point in your focus from your framework, but it is as artificial as, basically, perspective is applied to painting. It is not that the inner self is not aware of all this, but that it has already chosen a framework or a given frame of existence that emphasizes certain kinds of experiences over others. Notes, Session 806. Sue Watkins has been mentioned and at times quoted in a number of Jane's books. I'm not going to read all that. We met Sue in September. She began attending class a month later and did so more or less regularly until the end of class in February 1975. At this time, Sue is working on a novel of her own and co-editing a weekly newspaper in a small town some 50 miles north of Elmira, New York, where Jane and I live. Jane spent considerable time before my birthday preparing a sketchbook of poems and colored drawings as a present for me. She touched upon many subjects in her highly original poetry and art. On reincarnation, she wrote, "To Rob, were you born once in winter, in Europe's ice and snow, when villages were dark at night and wolves roamed the towering hills? Or dark-skinned, did your swaddling cry pierce Egypt's early dawn? How many birthdays come and gone? How many homelands, each your own? How many loves have whispered through the patterns of your mind? How many sons and daughters have grown from your womb or lions? What voices merge with mine to wish you happy birthday? And what love within your past lay out a feast of wine and cakes?" Another poem, To Rob. We parked here today, and the green whirl swirled jungle quick downtown across the river, and like a city bushman I was in tune, swinging through thought's treetops while the traffic stopped and started, precise as a ceremony of animals, almost formal, engines thundering, then purring, wheels pausing, headlights hypnotized in sun. You walked into the bank, making it an exchange as ancient as any tribal allium. Okay, there was 2 poems there. Well, I've gotten pretty far in this one. I'm getting close to 40 minutes, so I will start the next one, which is called Events of Nature, and it's session 814. And I will talk to you then. This is the Dove Lady, over and out for now.